What's up everyone, this is Costa with Integral Audio, and today we're going to be talking about AudioThing Springs, which is a reverb plugin that uses a combination of convolution and modeling to recreate the sound of finished spring reverbs. So what we have here are three different sections inside this plugin. We'll start from the left and move on to the right. First, we have a bandwidth control, which controls the frequency spectrum of your input that is going into the reverb. It's basically just a low pass and a high pass filter that applies on your input. Next, you have an input gain and drive, which adds a bit of distortion using the preamp. Then you have your standard dry and wet knobs. Now in the next section, you'll find the actual parameters you'll be using to control your spring reverb. There is a drop-down menu which lets you select the different spring emulations. And over here you have a little information icon which shows you some information about the spring you are using. Now let's have a look at the toggle switches down here. You can select short or long decay for the reverb, and you have an HQ switch which lets you toggle the high quality mode on and off. Having that enabled will cost you some more CPU. You have a phase inversion switch which acts on the wet signal. And finally, we have a noise section which controls the level of the noise the original hardware used to create. Having the envelope switch enabled means that the noise will only be activated when the input signal is passing through. Then we have a pre-delay knob, a stereo width control, emphasis, and compression. With the stereo width knob, you can have your output completely mono or fully stereo. The emphasis knob boosts a specific high frequency which depends on the spring emulation you are using. And we have a compression knob which adds a little bit of compression to your width signal. If your reverb tail is not long enough or loud enough, then you'll probably find this guy quite helpful. Now over to the right, you have your backchannel EQ. There are 3 frequency selectors and 1 Q factor for the mid frequency. And for each frequency, there is a gain, of course. The EQ enable and disable switch. And we have a mode switch, which lets you select whether you want the EQ applied on both the dry and wet signal or just the wet signal. And finally, a toggle switch, which enables a soft clip for any peaks that have gone over 0 decibel. Alright, now let's listen to what this plugin sounds like. Here's the dry audio. Now let's listen with the reverb enabled, and first I'm going to be using the GBS 6 Springs emulation. Now let's listen to RE201 3 Springs. Now the A199 with 2 springs. I think this one's my favorite. Usually spring reverbs can be very overwhelming and weird, but this one just sounds very clean and smooth, yet it also contains the features that you look for in a spring reverb. Now I'm going to show you the changes in your sound, the parameter spring. Here's the dry audio. Now let's look at the drive. If you turn it up, you will hear a distortion. Now let's take a look at the decay length. This is the short decay. And this is the long decay. And here's what the noise sounds like if you turn it up. Now I'm going to show you what the stereo width does. First the mono output. And now the wide output. And here's what the emphasis knob does in this emulation. Here's what it sounds like if you turn up the compression knob. The way the EQ works is with very broad strokes. And personally, I would have loved to see a sharper Q factor for the mid frequency. So for the basic sculpting of the sound, then this could be enough. But for taking out any ringing from your reverb, for example, you will probably want to use a send and put an external EQ on the track. Now in this next audio example, I have 6 tracks, but I've used the Spring Reverb in only 5 of them. However, this should give you a good idea of what the plugin sounds like in a full mix. First, without the Spring Reverb. Now let's have a listen with the plugin enabled. You know, it actually sounds pretty good. It has that raw Spring Reverb sound that a lot of people like, and it adds a sort of natural life to all the instruments. Just for comparison, let's listen to the same piece of music, but this time I will replace the Spring Reverbs with IK Multimedia room and hall effects. There's obviously a big difference. The room and hall effects sound very, they sound expansive compared to the Spring Reverb. But at the same time, it kind of sounds lifeless compared to the Spring Reverb. So here's what we could try. We will let the room effect stay in all the instruments except for the lead instrument. So the lead guitar will have the Spring Reverb while the rest of them won't. Okay, that does sound nice. You know, using the Spring Reverb on the live guitar made me feel like it helps to sell the fact that it is live even more. So what I'm guessing is if you have a bass guitar or guitar virtual instrument, then you'll probably want to use this plugin, just crank up the drive and mess around with the parameters, and you'll find a setting that gives a natural grit to your track. So in my opinion, is this worth checking out? Well, if you're into Spring Reverbs, then this plugin does give you a lot of value. So I would definitely recommend it for those of you who enjoy Spring Reverbs, or if you're just looking to expand your reverb library. This is by no means the only reverb plugin that you will buy. So if you're on a low budget and you don't have a decent reverb already, then you will probably want to skip this one. That's it for the video. If you have any thoughts, then let us know in the comments below. The link to the plugin is in the description. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, then consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. Okay, then time to be geeks for a moment. Here's the most interesting thing that I found. When I turn on the high quality toggle, the entire frequency spectrum actually starts to move. I have 2 guesses about this. It could either be the same as the regular modulation parameter that we find in other reverb plugins, or it could actually be multiple impulse responses being generated over time. I'm just going to keep the toggle turned off for what I'm about to do next. Let's increase the emphasis knob and see what happens. This is the GBS with 6 springs. And this is the RE201 with 3 springs. This one's the A199 with 2 springs. Okay, for the rest, I'm just gonna put up some screenshots and you can have a look.